A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. It's 19 days down the line in the month of February.
And did someone say it's the 50th day of the year already? Good morning. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. It's your perfect day starter. How are you doing this beautiful Wednesday morning? We're here to make it even better. I am Bukola Koka. Welcome once again.
So, Bukola, what have you been tracking?
Oh, well,
to discuss for you?
But a lot of interesting things.
Maybe make it half, no one. They even give us up to one. Give us half.
A number of interesting things. It was, good to watch the book launch of former Inspector General of Police yesterday, Mr. Solomon Arase, his book centering on, better electoral management and culture in the country. And it was also interesting to watch former President Goodluck Jonathan, address Nigerians directly yesterday, telling Nigerians to reject bad politicians. And, that's at the heart of the matter. But, the appropriate cultural behavior for electoral management, the electoral process, is what is more important and what we should scrutinize a bit more closely. I'm wondering if, there's anyone who is above board in this matter. You know what they say, particularly when it comes to, political behavior, ideal political behavior. We say he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. So appropriate electoral behavior goes beyond that final part of the process where Nigerians go to elect their elected representative, either the executive, the legislature, but also internal party activities. So I'm wondering if, that started just a few years ago, maybe perhaps from 2023 general elections, but way back, where we began to have challenges with delegates electing their candidates either at the presidential level or at the legislative level. The culture of the dollar reign goes way back. So there really isn't anyone that is above board at this particular point in time. So we must, rethink our conduct and become born-again politicians, even though that seems like a far cry from where we should be right now. And we could talk about all political parties at this point in time, be it the PDP, the APC, even the Labour Party, internal, democracy within the parties, is a far cry from what it should be. The crisis within the Labour Party currently, also tells the story. And one wonders what the 2027 presidential election will look like. Okay. So those are the issues besides the others at the, policing level. But you go next, Jeffrey.
Well, for me, it's the issue of the GDP. I just wanted to educate Nigerians that with the rebasing of the GDP, not that the GDP,
not that inflation.
CPI numbers, I apologize, consumer pricing index numbers, it doesn't mean inflation dropped drastically by the percentage you're seeing or decline. That's not the appropriate number term to use. It stands at, yes, when you do month to month, it looks like it dropped. Even the people who reeled out those numbers were very clear. From Ayo Anthony, who was there, the statistics, to the statistician general, was also made mention of that. So inflation, the language is not drop or decline, it stands out because what we call the reference here, price reference here, called the base here, has changed. The items in terms of variations in the basket, or called the classification according to consumption purpose, COICOP, that's just the acronym for it. More like when they did the survey to check consumption pattern, what they found out that people spend more on, and they redistributed the percentage. So even the weightage was done in 2023, so that has also changed. The number of items in the basket has also changed from 700 and something to 900 and something. So I'm just trying to rush because we're going to break this down later on the show so people can understand what it just says. That this is a new era, this is a new phase. The full year of President Bola Tinubu was 2024. And that year is now the base year, because a lot of shocks happen in that particular year. A lot of deregulation happened in that particular year. So We're going to be breaking this down and what it means to what we call economic agents like the household, the government, and even the firms, and what we should be looking at the end of the day. But hey, let's bring you up to speed with what we'll be doing as far as today's program is concerned. Of course, we're getting started with rebased inflation numbers that I've just been explaining in just a moment. So what does this mean? Decline now, drop now. But we'll just break it down for you what a rebasing of CPI means and how it impacts you and I in terms of decision making. That will be the first port of call as far as the conversation today is concerned.
Yeah, and so for those of you who, like me, may have thought that perhaps their calculator fell inside water, that's not what happened. We're going to be asking particularly about those parameters that Jeffrey spoke about and break it down in layman's language, because Jeffrey has used a lot of terminologies, and I'm wondering if some Nigerians are,
We'll break it down.
So besides that, we'll also be touching on security this morning. A recent attack by bandits in the Kwande local government area of Benue State claimed the lives of 19 people. We'll be discussing ways to end these seemingly unending terror attacks in the northern part of the country.
All right, we'll move from there to Osun State. Calm may have returned, but the word, what do you call it now? Well, words continue as to who is responsible for what. We're going to look at the legal angle yet again as to how things escalated rather quickly to where we're going to have casualties in terms of 6 persons dying as a result of a court judgment interpretation or misinterpretation.
You can see that bus riddled with bullets. Very concerning situation. But of course, we'll also be looking at food security, as it is characteristic of us on the program, essential for a healthy and productive population. And Nigeria still has some work to do in that regard. The United Nations reports that at least 40.4 million people in northeastern Nigeria alone are food insecure. So what's the way forward? Our guests will be joining us to provide expert insights this morning.
And we will be bringing Innovator on our breakfast program, where we highlight all the people that are breaking barriers as far as women in terms of the digital space is concerned right here on the program. So you can see her. We'll talk about it in just a moment.
So, Jeffrey, time to delve into the papers, but of course, Kadi has recently joined us. Hi, Kadi. It's good to see you.
Great to be here. Good morning. Welcome once again to the show. I'm Kayode Okikiolu, and yes, we have quite a package for you. What are the dailies saying? I think we just get right into it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll start with The Guardian.
With?
The Guardian.
Guardian newspaper. I think it's a big one, clearly. Edwin Clark.
Yeah.
The great man, 97 years old. Where do you even start to describe this man? The caption is a life of struggle, statesmanship, agitation for true federalism. Tinubu, Obasanjo, Atiku will be governors lead tributes to a jaw leader. So he was the leader of PANDEF. He was a federal commissioner many years ago in 1975 for information. He was also very vocal in terms of the struggle of the Niger Delta region. He speaks his mind even at old age. So it's an incredible voice that the Niger Delta and the political space has actually lost. 97, amazing number of years he lives. Just a few days after Debanjo died, who was also 96. It looks like they did a meeting and said, I think we've tried for Nigerians. Let's take a bow. Now the younger generation, you sort yourself, we've done our bit. We thank them for their contribution.
Indeed, we do thank them. May his soul rest in peace. I recall, how he also demanded accountability in the funds of Delta State from former Delta State governor. And he's also been a very vocal voice in the struggle for resource control in the Niger Delta. It's my dream that, some members of these old guard that are still with us will live to see the Nigeria of their dreams, the Nigeria that they indeed fought for. But it seems that that is becoming increasingly elusive. But may his soul rest in peace, and we also commiserate with their family at this point in time. Well, that's it for The Guardian. We'll go next to this Nigerian newspaper, and it toes a different path in its headline, even though it also captures the passing on to glory of the Niger Delta leader. Here's the big story. Flush out fake drug syndicates. Reps blow hot. And there's a rider there. Raise concern over rebranding of expired drugs, altering expiry dates, production of fake medications being circulated to unsuspecting Nigerians. But there's more, a lot more beyond this that meets the eye. And you can refer to our most recent conversation with the Director General of NAFDAC, where we talked about the concerns of the organization, the budgetary provision to the agency in 2025, and the fact that, as strategic as NAFDAC is to the fight against fake drugs, there are only a handful of, officers deployed to fight the menace across the country. So inadequate staff is a big concern. So is the National Assembly also looking in that regard, advocating for increased recruitment to enable NAFDAC achieve its mandate? So that's it for this Nigeria this morning.
And over to Daily Independent. Daily Independent leads with something from former President Goodluck Jonathan, and this is what he says: politicians will behave well when we reject bad behavior as a false deployment of military for elections. You may be wondering, where is this coming from? But yeah, of course, coming from a politician, former president himself. This is now, I don't know, is he handing over the baton to the people now to ensure the politicians do the right thing, just in case the politicians do not want to behave? Well, he's saying if you reject bad behavior, then politicians will behave. That's what the former president is saying. And of course, the story about inflation makes its way to the front page. After rebasing, Nigeria's inflation, now Daily Independent says, drops to 24.48% from 34.80%. But not to worry, we're going to break all of that down for you on the show this morning. Is it a drop, really?
It is not a drop. Let's just be clear.
A recalculation of the methodology.
Keep the gunpowder dry. Just keep the mystery. We have a big one for you on
in
the
case
show
of somebody who may just rush to breakfast, I may not be able to catch the show. He didn't drop, he didn't decline.
Stay with us right here.
He just rebased. Okay. But it's okay if you take it that way. All right, we'll take a quick break, guys, and we will come back. But don't forget, X is the handle you can go to CTV Morning Brief. Is a hashtag to get your voices heard on the program. We have a segment that will look at trends and what you're saying. As far as those trends are concerned, we'll amplify your voice. WhatsApp number as well is also available for you to do that. Send your messages and videos. But we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll get to the very first conversation. Join us again.
Naturally, we're starting with the conversation around Nigeria's inflation figures. We had talked about whether or not it dropped, but hey, it didn't drop. It would only drop if you're using the same weight or the same measurements to measure it. But this is a different measurement entirely, or at least the parameters are different. So for those who are saying it may have dropped, well, the numbers look like it dropped, right? When you look at what it was before, 30-something to over 20-something. But in reality, it didn't quite drop. But let's speak with the experts on the show this morning so you understand what is it we're dealing with here. Because whether it's called the CPI or inflation figures, it deals with your pocket and how much you purchase items, either they're rare items or everyday items. And we're joined on the program right here in our Lagos studio by Dr. Titilayo Fowokon, who's a member of Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN. We also have Professor Adeolu Adenikinju, who's a professor, Department of Economics, University of Ibadan, and also the Nigerian Economic Society president. Prof, you're welcome to the Morning Brief.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
And Doctor, you're welcome as well.
Good morning.
Naturally, I'll just want to begin with Prof, because you've seen this for a long time now. How do Nigerians approach the new inflation figures? Well, the NBS calls it the CPI, but to break it down to people, this is also the inflation figure. So when you see what it is now, Prof, at 24.48%, what we had before was 34.8%. How should Nigerians see this figure? Is it a drop?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much, Kaudi. You said it all in your introduction. It's not actually a drop. Okay, what the MBS has done is to simply align, our inflation figures to something that is more realistic. Okay, that reflect current realities, that reflect current consumption behaviors of Nigerians. Okay, and that is the international best practices. Okay, the consensus, as it were, or the norm is that every 5 years the base will be adjusted because the economy is very dynamic. Things change all of the time, and therefore the measurements, of inflation, the CPI, which is a measure of increase in prices, we also have to adjust in order to reflect the reality that people live in. So, like you said, what has just changed is the weighting. Okay, that is a key thing that has changed in this index that we have. In other words, some of the products that we have more products now. Before we were looking at about 780 products. Now we have over 934 products that are being considered. Okay, some activities that were not there or were not prominent, in 2009, the last base year, now that are very significant, had to be reflected. Okay, and again, we must also know that because of the reality of the price, economic reforms, that came in 2023, the removal of subsidy, the exchange rate adjustments, Nigerians' behaviors have changed. Okay, you don't have many Nigerians now filling their cars when they go to petrol stations. Okay, you don't have many Nigerians now eat some of the luxurious foods. So things have changed. Okay, so the weight of some of those goods in our consumption basket have changed. So what the CBN, what the MBS has done is that they have been able to reflect the new, more realistically, if I can use that, the consumption behavior of Nigerians, okay, so that the measure of inflation we have now is more realistic than what we had before. And this issue has been on for a while. Let me just quickly mention that because I was on the CBN Monetary Policy Committee, for some time. And the CBN has continually at that time able to dispute the figures that the MBS was releasing because they think that the weight of food, in the CPI basket is not as strong as it, as it was at that time. And the CBN, the study that was carried out in 2023 has also actually shown that a lot of things have changed, and the new measurement, does not say that inflation has reduced. It's simply saying that given the current weighting system that we have, this is the measure of inflation that we have.
All right, thank you, Prof. Brilliant explainer there for those who are wondering how to approach this, where to place this. But Dr. Fowoko, maybe another angle to this, just to push this forward and further, as well as how government may want to, couch this, because the target for this government for inflation this year is 15%. Right. So, is this the route that we are taking to 15%? But more importantly, just to back up what Prof said, how do you approach this figure?
Thank you very much. When I heard 15%, I was like, well, we're optimistic by saying 15%, because I've looked at where we started from. I had to go back to 2015 because we're talking about rebasing. We're rebasing after 15 years. So looking at 2015, and I see that we were in single digits, but towards June, we started moving up the ladder, and it kept on increasing. So what basically has been done is just for the purpose of government policies, for the purpose of monetary policies, for the purpose of businesses. But if we look at the reality of today, the prices of things are still not reflected by the rebasing. Because you find out that when you talk of rebasing, I listened very well and I was told, okay, we're looking at current prices, current economic situation of the country, and then 2024 is more relevant, going by the
technical basis of the rebasing. But this is more for the policy side of it, for government decisions. But if you look, what's the real effect? The real effect is actually on the people. Cost of living, has it really, really gone down? And looking at the trend, the rebasing is not a reduction. I don't see it as a reduction, because what we're saying is we are looking at a period where inflation maybe a bit stabilized, comparing that to now. Compared to when you look at when we had subsidies gone and the aftermath effects and the oil and the fuel subsidy, the increase in transport, increase in housing rent, those increases are still there. You get to the market, real prices are still there. So I think this is more for business and government than for the Nigerians that we expect this to be for their benefit. So quite a lot of Nigerians don't really understand why we're talking of rebasing. I must be sincere with us. They're looking at, I need the prices of food to come down.
Simple.
Not that, so you can use this to plan your economy, but I want prices of things to come down. I tried buying things yesterday and I compared the price. So I was saying, well, is it this expensive? Well, maybe you are not in this country. So I think that's really the thing. We're looking at in absolute terms, are prices of things dropping? Rebasing is more for the economy, it's more for the businesses to plan, for those who wants to go to the capital market, for those who wants to look at other means of generating their product, reaching out to the tech world and things like that. But when we come to the ordinary man on the street, they want prices down. Food, shelter, clothing, transport, they are critical.
Fantastic setting out for the next question, which would be, what does this mean? What is the implication of this rebasing for the economy, for economic development? Professor Adiola Adenikinju, that would be for you, sir.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, what we try to, I mean, we don't say what we are trying to do. What I think the MBS is trying to do, and maybe this will now extend to all the key stakeholders, investors, government, is to be able to have data that is realistic, data that is correct, so that becomes the basis of planning. And we must know that, just like Madam said, at a point, around 2018, if I remember clearly, I was in the CBN Monetary Policy Committee. The inflation figure was coming to about 11%, 11.23%, so it became very sticky and it wasn't going down as part of whatever we were doing at that time. So what really happened is that it's not the base, it's not the value now. The base is not very important. It's what happens subsequently. It's the movement. So from now on, we start seeing, whether by policies of government or exogenous factors, what happens to the base. Is it going to be declining from 24.48, or is it going to be increasing? That's the measure. So this value that we just have now is, in my view, provides just a yardstick, a measuring rod as where we are now. This is the inflation rate. Now, subsequently, we'll start to see movements. Okay, just like it moved from 11% in 2018 to 34%, last year or early this year. So we'll start seeing that, as we move on. So the evidence of policy impact, okay, and decisions of economic agents will now be contingent on what happened to now. Will prices start going up? Will they continue to go up? Will they mute? Will they recede? And then on the basis of that, we're able to be now looking at the effectiveness of policy, and then we can then tie it down, because as you know, prices, inflation, some of the measures of macroeconomic stability. What investors are looking for, and what Nigerians, not just investors and stakeholders, is stability in prices. Okay, you want price to be stable so that you can plan your household budget, so that the economic agents can make plans. Okay, either investment decisions or consumption decisions, savings decisions. You want price to be stable. So now we have a base. Okay, that is most recent, that reflects, like I said, most current behavior. Because you will note, in 2009, how many people eat out? how many people are spending so much on data, okay, and phone and all of that. Those things were not very important at that time, okay? But a whole lot of things have changed, okay? So a lot of people eat out now. A lot of people order their foods and things like that that were not there or not important in 2009 when we had when the last this year where that we just left, okay? So we have a more realistic data that will allow government, that will allow monetary authorities, that will allow investors, that will allow economic agents to make plans. But from now on, we start seeing the impact of policy. If it goes up, it means inflation is increasing. Okay, the stability, monetary stability, becomes, is not being achieved. If it is receding to 15%, then we can start to conclude or make inference that the government is doing what is right. Okay, and I think that will also be beneficial to investors and the rest of people in the economy.
Oh, all right, Prof. Just before I come to Madam in the studio, I think you and Madam here have established what this really means, and this is we now need to check whether whatever President Bola Tinubu is doing is working going forward, because this is a new era in terms of numbers and all of that. But I'm curious for you to speak to how the classification and redistribution in terms of variation of the weight was done. I looked at the numbers. Food and non-alcoholic beverages were reduced from 51 to about 40. And then there was a jump of the restaurant and accommodation services that moved from 1 to about 12, which is meals away from home, which still talks about food technically. I wanted you to speak to some of this, how this number, because if food had remained the way it was, perhaps the numbers would have gone up. But now it has been redistributed. We won't, even in the, what do you call it now, in the restaurant part as well. There's even the accommodation part in the housing, water, electricity, gas, and fuels that have been drastically reduced from 16 to 8. And they say they removed what is considered impute rent of landlord. Of course, they don't pay their own rent. I wanted you to speak to that so that Nigerians can also understand how we came to where we are. Because we're talking about reflecting current reality. And that's the key word here, Prof. I come to Madam as well.
Thank you very much. Like I said, if we look at the current behavior of Nigerians, definitely we'll see some difference, in patterns from what it used to be. I mean, if I drive down my streets now, there are many restaurants, there are many, eateries that are there. People can, we have, the Uber Eats and all of them now that were not there or were not very important, in 2009. Okay, so now CBN, from the last survey, there was the National Standard of Living Survey that was carried in 2023, had shown some recent, the behavior of Nigeria, that people now, a good component of their consumption is not home. They're not buying raw material, not raw food to cook. Okay, they eat out. Okay, and so that has to be reflected. Okay, so they have moved that component of food, from food, to restaurants, because significantly, and I mean, you are in Lagos, or and those who are in Abuja will know that a whole lot of people now don't eat. I mean, periodically, if not regularly, from restaurant. So that is more realistic. So what they've done now is to move that portion, okay, of feeding from food. Home food to eat at a restaurant. So that's brought about a significant shift, okay, in the value of the share of restaurants, in the basket. Also, now, how many universities did we have in 2009? How many universities are we having now? So another thing they've done is that, a students' accommodation, okay, has been moved away from housing, okay, code 3 or 4. Now also to join I think restaurant or house, So again, that was based on data, and the way that, and to be in line also with international best practices.
All right.
Okay. So on the basis of that, the composition we have now, the weighting that we have, okay, is based on the most recent data about consumer living standards, okay? And it shows, how we distribute our expenditure over the various, items that that we have as household. So I think it's data driven, in my view, and it's more reflective also of the current behaviors of most Nigerian households.
All right, thank you, Prof. Let me come to Dr. Folko now. So you've said time and again that this is maybe for government, those in business, to plan. And one of the very obvious things that people will be looking at after this is, okay, if the price of food items have moved, now we're very certain of the rate, then our salary, our income should also follow suit and all of that. So maybe you want to add some of the things he said, but what then should government begin to do with this data? Whether or not people agree with it, government businesses, what should we begin to do concretely to ensure that people now feel the impact of policies?
Thank you very much. I think Prof has said quite a lot, but I'll start from the point of the food part of it. The fact that the weight attached to food has reduced doesn't mean the prices have reduced. And if I'm talking as a worker, that is number one need for me. So government should start looking at how do we get stability in terms of price of food. I've heard a lot about agri business. What are we doing to ensure that this translates into a lower price of food? There was a time we talked about insecurity, and because of that, the farmers can go to the farm. As much as we're able to bring that down with the news we're hearing now, that has come down beyond before, how are we empowering farmers to look at that? So government policy around agriculture is very necessary. If that goes on, then I'm talking about my salary. Now, we can't use the rebased figure to determine salary because the real prices is still there. So every employee will expect some adjustment on an annual basis because prices of things are not going down. I'll give a typical example. You enter a fuel station and you hear price of fuel has gone down, but the price on the face of the pump is still the same. Now you enter a fuel station tomorrow and prices went up overnight. The price on the pump has changed. So why is the price not going down when the price of the products went down? Why did it suddenly go up when the price of this product went up? So there's something has to be about price control, especially in so many areas where there are volatility, and that we're still seeing. So for an average worker is looking at that disposable income, being able to be enough for him to keep body and soul together and still be able to live with full sanity. So that would be their, whether you rebase or not, they're just looking at how much do I have? Is my disposable income increasing or is shrinking? Whatever you rebase, I don't want to know. I want to get to the market. If I buy something for 5 naira yesterday or 15 naira yesterday, I want to see it come to 40 or 30. That's what everybody's thinking about.
And you know, that's instructive because, you know, some would say that towards the end of the year, the price of food items will drop towards the end of the year to the beginning. But afterwards, as we approach Ramadan, the price of foodstuff will suddenly, you know, go up without any external influences. And you talk about price volatility,
yeah.
But some would say that, you know, it's a free market economy, that we cannot, you know, introduce any form of price control.
I think most businesses will look at it from that angle. But I think there should be a threshold. Because if we keep saying it's a free market, then it gets to a stage that the ordinary man on the street is unable to be able to put body and soul together. Then we have issues about security. People will just want to get it the way they want it. And at times I get some messages on my phone and they're saying, we've not eaten. And I was like, I feel like, okay, what can I do? But I can't do that for everybody that sends messages to me. Neither can all of us line up in front of the government house to say, this is what people are going through. So I think there should still be some form of control. Maybe not telling businesses how to dictate their price, but there should be a threshold. I look at a country like Rwanda, and I know what they do. They may be small compared to Nigeria, but let's also look at other countries that are as big as we are. How are they able to manage prices They may not necessarily hold on to the bill and say you must not sell beyond this. But I believe prices at times, businesses regulate prices at times when they see the reaction of the people, consumption pattern, the profits not going up, the sales not going up. They'll probably be forced to say, let's do some. And that's within the business. But I believe there's a government involvement that needs to come in. I'm not saying you should restrict everybody to a particular price, but government should see when things are going out of the curve and then see how to try to bring it down and regulate that.
So government should bring some. Okay, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Okay, as we begin to wind down, let's take you to Prof in winding down. A couple of issues I would like you to address in maybe 1 minute. One of which is the MPC starting the meeting today. You've sat in that room as well. Tomorrow we're going to get the numbers. So what should we be expected? Because now we're talking about economic agents. Madam has been defending the household that is the most important and which is the correct one. Government maybe have a bragging right now because it looks good on paper, but the firms are waiting for the numbers from the CBN. Should we be expecting a hold, a hike, or go dovish at some point? Because all of this affects the business climate in general.
Okay, I think we should also know that 24.48 is still one of the highest inflation rates in the world. So it's not a small. It's not as if it is saying that Nigeria has low inflation. Inflation rate is still one of the highest in the world. So government should still be concerned about that. But talking about the CBA, well, the MPC has one or two. They have very good data, most recent data, extensive data in taking their decisions. But I'm sure they're in a more comfortable position now than they were in the last meeting in November. Now, I mean, the policy rate is above inflation. So so we have real interest rate now, which is good for them, which is good for the economy. So I think, I don't know what is happening to liquidity growth. They will have that data in terms of monetary surfeit in the economy. But basically, I think it's most likely that they're going to hold. So that they see where this is going and look at maybe the meeting in March and see the trend, okay? But, where would they are now? With the data showing that the interest rate is positive, that we have real interest rate, positive real interest rate. I think that will give them, some confidence or to want to hold, to pause and then see what will happen subsequently. Is it going to be going up or is it going to be coming down? And then if inflation rate trends downwards, they may start to, after some time, they may try to actually rewind and sort in the monetary policy, monetary constraints.
So we'll wait to see how that plays out. Everything actually. Well, the scriptures say works together for good, but we'll see how this works together, hopefully for the good of Nigerians. But Dr. Falcon, final point I want you to make, since you have a very strong background in taxation and the rest, a lot of people are seeing this ATM hike as another form of taxation. And, they always say taxes in the real sense should be good because it's meant to oil the system and make sure services improve. But Dr. Falcon, a lot of people are not exactly happy because they've gone through a lot from POS operators. So now they go to the ATMs and it's just like another POS operator, but it's like a machine. Is it fair? Or?
I think it's the wrong timing. I think it's the wrong timing. We're currently talking about reform, overall reform. And the reform, we see what that has generated in the tax reform, policy reform, fiscal policy reform. We see so many stories and reactions it has generated. But this is actually not tax. It's a bit, when I saw this information on tax, I was like, people need to understand, it's an additional income to the banks. And the whole essence of this is for the banks to expand, have more ATM. But that's also the other side of it. If we're saying we want to go cashless, and we're saying we have more ATM, then that means people should make more withdrawals. Now, the whole essence of cashless is to make people do transfers, do some other things. But the people that actually go and do the cash transactions, if you look at them, they're actually not in that category of people that do transfers. They have to. And maybe one instance where you have to go to an ATM to withdraw. Now, what it means now is you do 3 withdrawals, you don't pay anything. But now, you do 3 withdrawals, you pay as high as 300 on top of that withdrawal. Yeah. That's if you are not if you are using your own bank's ATM. Now, you now decide to go into a mall. I believe maybe for those who have the luxury of enjoying a mall, then you pay more for that because there are additional charges. It's really not tax. It's a fee to the bank. I did a calculation that if you have 1,000 customers that do 50 transactions each, if you have 100 naira that you have to charge them for that ATM transactions they do, that's 5 million additional income to the bank. Just
like that.
Yeah. And if that amount is not VAT inclusive, which means there's a 7.5% on that 5 million. So if you add that, that's about 700,000 plus. So for every consumer using the ATM, you're contributing 5 million to that particular bank, and you're also paying VAT if there's VAT on it. So those are some of the things that people have not seen the impact. Now, the whole essence is to build more ATM. But I remember we had the issue about super profits by banks.
Right.
That is there. We had this windfall tax that came up just to see how the government can take a chunk of what the banks got during the foreign exchange boom. Now, this is another era. I guess it's not the right time.
There you go. And I know a lot of people have given the CBN an ultimatum to reverse it, but we'll see how this plays out. But we have to thank you so much, Dr. Titilayo Fowoko, member of Governing Council of the Chartered Institute of Taxation of Nigeria, CITN. Thank you, and thank you for making a case for the family, for Nigeria. We've also been speaking with Professor Adeola Adenikinju, President of the Nigerian Economic Society, Professor, Department of Economics, University of Ibadan, the first and the best. Thank you, Prof, for your time.
It's biased, Gowdy.
Thank you so much, Gowdy.
I'm sorry, I'm biased like that. But we'll take a quick break, and when we return, it's a very sad tale in Benue State. The death recorded this week is nothing to write home about, and once again, we dig deep into that matter. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
From tax matters, we transit to another equally important subject, and that is security. Security in the north-central part of the country, in a state that is supposed to be the country's food basket and is gradually losing that old status. What happened particularly in Kwande local government area this week? Joining us to have this conversation is Honorable Gambo Simon. He's a member representing Mata State constituency in Ushongo local government area of Benue State, and is the chairman, House Standing Committee on ICT and Digital Economy, Benue State. He joins us via Zoom. We also have joining us Mr. Solomon Lopev, is the technical advisor to the Benue State Governor on Media, Publicity and Strategic Communication. He also joins us virtually from Makurdi, the state capital. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Now, Benue State is very, very concerning for every Nigerian as far as security is concerned. Perhaps I'm going to start with you, Mr. Lopev. What exactly happened in Kwande local government area where 19 people died this week?
Well, yeah, thank you very much for having me. Number one, I need to establish this fact. You know as well as I do that security is a challenge. Is a global challenge, is a challenge around Nigeria, is a challenge around northern Nigeria, is a challenge across most states in the country. We've had issues around the state with herders, we've had issues of community clashes, we've had operations of groups and cults. We've had issues, particularly in the Kwande local government area where you're talking about. People who are trying to illegally extract resources, our God-given resources in the area without following due process, who have been coming in criminally to destabilize the area in order to extract and take away what is legitimately given to us as a state and as a nation. They have been using every means possible to destabilize the area so that they can cover their operations without anyone getting to know what is happening there. Then we have issues of criminals, and then you have issues of people taking advantage of the insecurity around the area, and then you have politicians who are trying to cause instability to discredit whoever is in power. These things have been happening for the past 13 years. It's been going on and on for the past 13 years. His Excellency, Reverend Father Dr. Hyacinth Romelia, inherited this when he came on board. But what you're asking particularly, which was the incident that happened, it's been happening in recent times, attacks here and there, affecting communities, affecting people, affecting those resident in the area. But we had a situation where we had attacks from herders. That was the report we heard. And then we sent security operatives who went there to check what was happening there. The question number one is, has there been attacks in the region? Of course, there has been. But then is the state being overwhelmed? No, the state has not been overwhelmed. Now, what we did was to go there on ground to check for ourselves what was really happening. And we discovered that, of course, there were attacks, people who came in to try to destabilize the people and cause problems. But then we also realized that the security operatives that have been posted there intervened on time, and there has not been too much damage. Every damage is damage, and everything that is done to destabilize any human being at all, whatever level, whatever point, it's not good enough. But at that time that we went to see, a lot of calm has been returned, which is what His Excellency has been doing over time to intervene every now and then to make sure that there's peace and stability within the region and every other region in the state.
Mr. Solomon, let's take it to Mr. Simon. Mr. Simon, I would like your response as well, but Mr. Solomon has given the position of government, but you are a member of the House who is supposed to hold the government to account. I listen and I'm wondering, people died. This has been repetitive. If we take score of people that have died in Benue State, careless death, avoidable death, resolvable death, is very heartbreaking, and yet it's happening, and there is no guarantee that it will not happen again. So it appears that it's more of reactive than proactive. People, as long as somebody died, it's no longer a joke. Restoring peace is another kettle of fish. So what is the House doing practically to put pressure on the government and the governor and his people, and maybe push the governor to liaise with the federal government to stop this reckless killing of people who just want their daily lives to work?
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate you and for the concern of the people. Yes, I heard the Solomon speak concerning the security surrounding the state and particularly in Kwande Axis. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you, please go ahead.
Yes, particularly in Kwande Axis, where I came from. Yes, it's right. I see. He made one statement there that where they are not so much like. Then I want please look at himself. That's why we the House members, the 10 Benue State House of Assembly members, we are calling on them to sit up. Yes, His Excellency is doing his best, but then it looks as if there are sabotage among these people that he appointed to help him look this thing, checkmate this thing. You can imagine someone who has been saddled with the responsibility to look about the security coming on air to tell the world that nothing happens. Thank God Solomon came today and said, yes, things have been happening in Benue State. So that is the situation. It's not far from what you have said. So we, the Assembly members, yesterday we called on him to come and explain to the people of Benue State and the whole world to know what he said. Was it the right thing, or maybe he was in a kind of an influence? Somebody influenced him to say such kind of thing that nothing happened to Kwande. Nobody was killed in Kwande. And as we speak now like this morning, people are still running. They left their homes because of what? The situation within that area.
Well, Mr. Simon, so let's get some things clear now. You said this has been on, this has happened before. By the way, we're not able to show the images or videos. They're really gory. But just to explain, you see machete cuts, deep machete cuts for some people who barely survived that attack. And I want you to speak just straight to the matter. Is it true that this was done by herders?
Yes, it's true.
No, this is for the spokesperson of the government, Mr. Yopev, rather. Mr. Simon, thank you for that, but Mr. Yopev.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Kayode, for that question. As I outlined this, I outlined it earlier, and I told you, security challenges within the area is not just about herders. It's also about inter-community clashes. You also have operations of gangs and cults, and then you have those who are trying to come and take over the mineral resources of the area.
Yeah, I understand that very well. I'm talking about this particular attack in Kwande. Was it by herders, as has been said, by the people themselves?
Yes, that's from when we went there, went on ground. That's the report we got from those, because we have people on ground who are also checking what is happening. We have security operatives on the ground. And what the reports the people gave them when they began to run away from their community it was herders that attacked them. But now what we're talking about, which is what we discovered, is some miners and some people who are criminals are using the shield of herders sometimes to also perpetrate this kind of instability in the place and cause mayhem in the area. Now, what is happening within the area, particularly, what the DG of Homeland Security was talking about was the exaggeration and overblown out of proportion of some of these reports that come. For instance, you have a situation where you are called that about 50 people have died. Then you go in there to check, and then one person dying is bad enough. 2 people dying is bad enough. But then why would you exaggerate a number and call a number that is out of proportion? I mean, that's what he was trying to talk about.
Fair enough.
So
how many people died from a government account, just to be clear from your side, how many people died in this Kwande attack? That's from the government side.
Well, the last count we talked about, we haven't had more than 5 people that have been counted on the ground from the reports we have from security on the ground, which is, of course, bad enough. But the truth is, why the blowing out of proportion? That's the question. People go online and begin to say things that are not correct, trying to hide the effort that His Excellency and the people of Benue State are making to have peace restored in that area. That's the question we've been asking time and again.
Mr. Yopev,
people go on the internet.
Mr. Yopev, would you be capturing the situation accurately if you said that people are blowing it out of proportion? Now, I'm going to put that.
Of course, I will be.
I'll put that in proper context. Agatu local government, for instance, has been constantly attacked in Benue State in the last decade. Gwe East, Gwe West has also been experiencing attack consistently. A few weeks ago, we had conversations with certain persons that are internally displaced persons in Benue State, and they say that they're not even safe in their IDP camps in Benue State, that they experience attacks in their IDP camps. And you started this conversation by saying that the state government is not overwhelmed. Would that be true if you considered the constant spate of attacks that we've been seeing in Benue State? Some would ask, which part of Benue is safe after all?
Every part of Benue is safe. Everywhere you go in Benue is safe. Now, as I told you before, security is not absolute. There is nowhere you have perfect security and 100% security. Not in the UK, not in Nigeria, not in the US, not anywhere. Now, what we're trying to talk about is His Excellency inherited 12 years of instability and fightings and killings. And that has dropped drastically. He said it time and again, and even last week he mentioned this. Before His Excellency came on board, you heard killings of 50, 60, 100, you heard killings of this. It's not as if any number is good enough, but that has been dropped drastically. The Way West you are mentioning, for instance, about 8 council wards were displaced. 5 of those council wards have returned back to their motherland. They're already in their places now. We made a report about that. We showed it even on channel television. This is peace is returning as fast as possible. Go to Sankara where people could not go before now. If you go there right now, there's a lot of peace. And
are you also aware that the people say when they want to bury their dead, they have to pay to go back to their homeland to bury their dead? They said that their homelands have been taken over from them by the herders. Are you aware of these things? And how far were the efforts to resettle the people in their homelands, if indeed you are saying that every part of Benue State is safe?
Now, what you need to look about is where we're coming from and where we are at this point in time. This is what has been inherited over the past 12 years and has been happening consistently. Some people were driven out of their homelands about 10 years ago, before His Excellency even came on board. This is not trying to be we're not trying to put up a defense. We're trying to tell you that within less than 2 years, His Excellency has done more for the state in terms of security provision than any other government has done in the past 2-3 decades. Now, what we're talking about here is very simple. Those areas we're talking about may have been areas where those who were displaced a long time ago. And of course, we have heard stories here and there. I mean about those. But His Excellency is working tirelessly to ensure that that is also put in the past. Now, remember that security is not something you just wave the magic wand and it disappears. This is a process. You have to follow due process. You have to follow tactics. You have to follow calculations. You know, you don't just walk
just a moment. Just a moment, Mr. Ayope, before I take it out. I think, but let me just take it to Mr. Gambo. But in one breath, you had said that everywhere is safe. In another breath, you're admitting that insecurity is everywhere. So I wouldn't know which to take on this particular one. But let me, just a moment, I'll come back to you. I'll come back to you.
There's no admission that insecurity is everywhere. I am telling you that His Excellency inherited 12 years of instability in the state.
But the truth remains that there are parts of Benue that is still unsafe. We gave you data, and we're asking you, how do you say you're not overwhelmed when there's consistent attack?
Here and there. I told you there's nowhere you have absolute security anywhere in the world.
Otukpo, Kwande, Agatu, all of this place.
You are mentioning Otukpo. Where are the attacks in Otukpo? These are stories to hear, and I've been telling you, reporters, time and again. When you hear stories, send people to the site. You have investigative journalism. Send people to the site. Let them also check for themselves.
Okay, let me just ask you. Let me just hold on, Mr. Ayope.
What happened to them?
Mr. Ayope, so let's take it to Mr. Gambo.
And begin to throw it around. You should also investigate and find out what is for sure.
Mr. Gambo, let's come to you for a moment. Mr. Ayope, I think we've gotten your thoughts and we've established what we can establish from you. But let's get to Mr. Gambo Simon. You are the House of Reps. You stayed there. Your people have been attacked. You have heard Mr. Ayope say, what is your response to him when he says government has not been overwhelmed? He's also made a point that there has been gains by the alias government, but their attacks still go on. And we are talking about this reactive mode, or what you call not being overwhelmed, the argument of whether they are overwhelmed or not, and what is done to further protect the people. Mr. Gambo.
Yeah, thank you. I think I appreciate the gentleman there, Mr. Ayope. But then, at least, the truth is very clear here. He admitted, and I want to tell him, you see, if you want to help the governor, the best way to help the governor is to tell him the truth and the bitter truth, what is happening. If you tell the governor that, yes, the situation in Kwande, to be precise, the situation in Kwande is overwhelming, so that the governor can do something better than covering up. If they are covering up, then there is something behind that they are doing that we, the people of Kwande, did not know. He said they went there. Please, can you tell us that yesterday, what happened? How many bodies? He made mention of people that died in Kwande were not up to 6. That's a flatter lie before the public. You can go there, go to NKC in Jatoka now, NKC hospital, I'm making it the name. Go there now and see what is happening there now yourself. For goodness sake, we are here together to help the governor. And the only way we can help him is by we telling them the truth. We call on the security security advisor to the governor, how many times to the house? To let them know that if they cannot do this thing, there was a time we moved a motion to ask the governor to sack them. Because if they cannot come to defend the life and properties within the state, then what are they doing? If they are capable to do this, let them give way so that people that are willing to help the state should come in. Not by we trying to cover up, tell the governor that is working. Yes, he's working. But in terms of security, I'm saying this, his best is not enough. If his best is enough, we couldn't have called on him yesterday at the floor of the house. We called for his tax that he should come and explain next week when we resume. He should come and explain to the house what is happening.
All right. So
Representing the people. So we cannot sit and see our people dying every day, calling us every day because they are killing. At least to shock you, last 2 weeks when we were in sitting, and I think he made mention that there's nothing that happened in Otukpo. We were in sitting. The member representing Otukpo, Honorable Kennedy Ango, ran out of the sitting. When he came back, he said there is an emergency here. We said, what happened? He now brought out the pictures and told us what is happening in that place. People were killed. The deputy governor came out to say it. He went for the burial, for the mass
last week.
for Benue State.
all right.
I said 2 weeks back. I didn't say last week. I said 2 weeks back when we were sitting.
So there you have it. Thank you, Mr. Gabos Simon. Mr. Yopev, I mean, these are facts out there. And just going back to the incident in Kwande, the representative of Kwande East, that's Mr. Mato, I believe that's his name, Mr. Samuel Mato, gave the figures yesterday. If I said 10 more bodies were recovered yesterday morning or the day before in the morning, added to the 5 previously, so it's 15. For you to say 5, it just paints that picture of you really know what is actually going on in those parts of the state. And one of the campaign promises of a governor when he was campaigning, and there were lots of expectations from the people for him. One of the campaign promises was that he said if he wins, he would, among other things, establish permanent integrated forward operation bases for security men at all the flashpoints where there have been cases of armed attacks and displacement of people. For the Kwande people, they didn't see any of that. So what's going on? Promises made, not fulfilled, at least for those people. They don't see the fulfillment.
Kyle, lots of promises made, lots of promises kept. And I'm not trying to blow anything out of proportion here. He said something about covering up, and I need to let you know. Now, since His Excellency came on board, there are lots of things he has done about security. For instance, just recently, he launched what you refer to as Operation Anyamyo. This is a combination of the DSS, the Army, the Civil Defense, the Air Force, the Navy, and all of that put together. He also brought on board what is referred to as the launch army of the Benue Civil Protection Guard. Now, this is a merging together of young people and all the strong people around the communities, what you refer to as community policing. 5,000 of those people were brought on board. He released about 100 hillocks for security forces. He gave about 600 bikes for us to be able to reach into hinterland. The man himself has been now in the Katsina axis, where you have the Sankara axis, for instance. Bishop Isaac Dugu is leading a peace talk where the Totiv and all other rulers are involved in the talks, and a lot of peace has been restored. When a man is making this kind of efforts, you can't say that he has anything to hide. What does he have to hide in the first place? He has come here for one primary reason, to give peace to his people, to bring development to the state. He cannot, on the other hand, be doing things that will contradict the promises he has made. He has been keeping all the promises. If you go to Kwande, for instance, now, what is talking about? Right. We have had all this. For instance, if you speak to Brigadier General Rabiu has been there. The DSS coordinator, Dr. Bison, has been there. The Chief in Yabene has been there. Right. Lara Bitrus, the state commandant of the civil defense, all of these people have been there.
Mr.
This is a collaboration between them and the state to ensure that peace returns in that region. This is not like this is about the lives of the people.
How are they there? You've mentioned all these big, pardon me, you've mentioned all of these names. How are they there? And that attack happened. 15 people killed. So what exactly is going on?
Now, for Canada, let me tell you the terrain. If you go to a Kwande local government area, the terrain is hilly, is an unstable. That's the word I can use. It's a very dicey kind of situation we have as far as the terrain is concerned. And those people that are attacking, usually they come from Kashimbala. That is the findings we got. The boundary between Cameroon, Taraba, and Benue. And when they're coming through that side, what they are using is a guerrilla attacks method. They are not located in a particular place where any security outfit can go to attack them and clear them out.
Just a moment.
And they go out, come in, and go out. And efforts are being made constantly.
Just a moment, Mr. Yopef. We're totally out. We're totally out of time. If you can hear me, Mr. Yopef, the point here is you've come back to the same point. Nobody's saying effort has not been made. Like the House member says, effort is not enough. Nobody applauds effort. We want result. If whatever, all this visit, even if the governors visit and people still die, effort doesn't make any meaning. That's what we're saying. More things have to be done. We're trying to protect Nigerian citizens, which everyone swore to. But that's the much we can take, Bukola.
Yes, indeed. And Mr. Yope, just to mention that, another House member, Honorable Ubo, I believe, Teze Ubo, held a press conference yesterday, and he said 40% of the arable farmlands in the state have been overrun and are currently under the control of suspected armed herders. We hope that the governor gets this message, and indeed all these efforts that you've talked about, will translate into action, and that would be meaningful peace for the people of Benue State. We've been talking with Honorable Gabo Simon. He's a member representing Mata State constituency in Ushongo local government area of Benue State. We've also been talking with Mr. Solomon Yopev, who is the technical advisor to the Benue State governor on media, publicity, and strategic communication. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And from one concern to yet another, this time the political crisis in Osun State. Before we get that, we'll tie this to food security, but that will be after this break. Stay with us, we'll be right back.
Welcome back. Let's now talk about food and nutrition security for Nigerians. We're being joined in the program by the country representative, political director for PropCon Plus, Mr. Adiye Ode. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Ode, thank you so much for coming on the program. Mr. Adiye, my apologies. Thank you for coming on the program.
For having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, madam, I'm particularly happy that it's a woman that is in conversation with us because, the maternal instinct is very strong to make sure that food is provided for family. If I have my way, I would advocate that going forward, Nigeria's ministers of agriculture should be women because, well, I don't want to go further than that, just because of that maternal instinct. But when you look at the food situation in the country and given the inflation number, whether rebased or the former one, I want you to assess the efforts made and what you're seeing as output and whether or not you're satisfied.
Well, I must say that this government has recognized the challenges with food security. That's one thing we would say, because very early on, they declared a state of emergency on food security. That's great. And there have been a lot of policies to address that, and that's great. But the truth is that you can say everything, you can have all the right policies, but if it's not making a change to the numbers of people who are food deficient, nutrient deficient, facing food insecurity, then there's still a problem. And I think the challenge is that we are addressing some of the symptoms. We're throwing palliatives at the problem, but we are not addressing the root causes of food insecurity. There's political instability. People have been driven off their farms. People cannot produce enough. The markets are not accessible to many people. There's exclusion in that. People cannot access infrastructure for various reasons. Some of it because of the changes in the exchange rate, some of it because of the increase in fuel prices. So the fuel-based equipment they used to use, for instance, for irrigation, they can't afford those anymore. So it reduces agricultural productivity, it reduces incomes for many families. It means that people have been taken off the land, they don't have incomes. So of course, they are not able to afford the food that they need. So that's a challenge. So it doesn't matter if you have the good policies, but if people cannot afford what food there is, and if there isn't sufficient food available, then that's a problem. Additionally, if it's not the right food. So if if you have a child under 5, and every day you deliver a bowl of maize meal to the child, of course that child is going to be nutrient deficient. So that's a challenge. So we need to address the root causes of food insecurity in Nigeria. We need to increase agricultural productivity. We need to build resilient supply chains for food products.
Right.
We need to increase availability of nutrient-rich food that is affordable. So we need to provide all this.
And you know, it's not rocket science, really. When you look at some of these things, they look very straightforward. In fact, they use simplest of terms when describing the solutions. But when it's time to implement the solutions, then you realize that it's almost even more difficult than rocket science. I know PropCom Plus is meant to be an 8-year program, I think 2023 to 2030, supported by the FCDO or the UK aid, as the case may be. And you wonder, to what extent are we also learning from other climes? I know we can say we have the arable land, we have the human resources, but obviously something is missing. So what are some of the technologies beyond funding is great, right? But if there's anything we're learning or relearning, is that funding has not really achieved all of the things we had hoped the funding or aid would achieve. So some have said, let's get the technology. Let's be able to transfer technology beyond just funding. Let's have some, you know, stability in these interventions. So what are some of the things that we're doing differently this time so we don't end up where we are right now with some of the other intervention programs?
Yeah, so some of the things we're doing, we're looking at solutions that can stand the test of time. And sustainability is something that we really, really want to put in place. And as you know, or you probably don't know, PropCom Plus is a market-based program. So we use market systems approaches, market systems development approaches. We don't intervene directly in the market because when we are no longer there, we still want the markets to function effectively. So we work through market facilitators, market intermediaries. We facilitate their proper functioning within the market. So some of the things we're doing, we've looked at access to climate smart seeds. Climate smart seeds that are drought resistant, seeds that really can withstand some of the changes in the environment and assure that farmers can be more resilient. So some of these seeds are not easily available to farmers. We're improving access, working with seed companies like Premier Seeds, Value Seeds, who use people within the farming communities. We call them community seed multipliers. So they use them, they contract them to multiply seeds within the communities, and then they buy the seeds from them. Those multipliers are demonstration farms, but they're also getting the seeds that they plant from the seed companies. So the quality is assured. They also use rural seed promoters. So they are people within the communities, maybe people who sell agricultural inputs. They are known to the farmers. So we're bringing the seeds to the doorstep of the farmers, and we are also assuring the quality of those seeds. Now, when you look at...
All right, these seeds, madam,
yes.
Are they genetically engineered seeds, biofortified seeds?
You've used two phrases like they are interchangeable, but they are not, and I don't want to go into the science of that. We are looking at biofortified seeds as well as other seeds that are not necessarily, that are not biofortified, but some of them are biofortified seeds, but they are not genetically modified seeds.
Okay, so for some
beyond that, we...
Go ahead, land on that thought.
Yes, we are also working on the livestock, in the livestock sector. We are increasing the supply of vaccines. One of the biggest challenges for the poultry industry, for the small ruminant industry, is disease such as the peste do petit ruminante, as well as Newcastle disease, which devastates our flocks and our flocks. Right. So we're working with the National Vet Research Institute to increase the supply of vaccines by 600%. So hopefully by the end of this year, the vaccine supply should increase. But beyond that, we are also looking to work with the Federal Ministry of Livestock Development to privatize the vaccine development in Nigeria, because it's the capacity of the NVR is just not sufficient. And we also want
madam, because of the luxury of time,
commercial enterprise. I'm sorry?
Just because of time, we apologize. We know you have a lot to say as part of this particular conversation is concerned, but time just for want of time. Must thank you so much, and we thank you for the work you're doing and continue to do. Country Representative and Political Director for PropCon Plus, Mrs. Adiya Ode. Thank you, madam, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So we'll take a quick break now. When we come back, that very conversation that Bukola talked about the incident in Osun State that happened on Monday, but there are ripple effects. We'll want to talk about it today on the program after this break. Join us again. All right, welcome back. The interpretation or misinterpretation, if you will, or different forms of interpretation of a court judgment, the Court of Appeal judgment in the local government administration of Osun State has now led to the death of about 6 persons, according to police report. And there has been blame and counter-blame, well, words, literally, between the APC and the PDP as to who is responsible for what and whose persons died more than the other. By the end of the day, we have to look for a way forward. We cannot continue to accommodate the politics of violence where people have to pay for their lives. And that's why we're having this conversation even 3 days after that incident occurred. Engineer Remi Omowaye, Executive Director, Project Implementation at the Federal Housing Authority, joins us right here in our Lagos studio. The Special Advisor to the Governor of Osun State on Legal Affairs, Mr. Nuruddin Karim, also joins us virtually on the program. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, viewers at home.
So let me begin with where are we right now with that incident as far as the political landscape and the legalese is concerned?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I would want to commensurate with families of the lost one. It's quite unfortunate that we lost a lot of people. And I must also thank God that I'm alive today, because I also narrowly escaped being killed 3 days ago. My vehicle was ridden with gun bullets. nobody believed I would survive, but I really thank God. One thing is just clear. Law is not emotion. It's straightforward. There's a Court of Appeal judgment. We sought, in our release, we sought some orders, and part of the orders is that the local government validly elected council members, the chairman and the councillors, should be reinstated back to the council, which the Court of Appeal granted. In their statement, they said your appeal is meritorious and allowed. Court of Appeal judgment usually comes in three forms. It's either they tell you it is allowed, or they tell you it is allowed in part, or they disallow it. So if they tell you it is allowed, what that means is all your relief has been approved, has been granted. But if they tell you it is allowed in part, they would now list which part of the reliefs that is allowed. So, but in this judgment, it is straightforward. It is clear that all our appeal has been allowed, which includes returning this validly elected council chairman and councillor back to office. They were taken out of office based on a Federal High Court judgment of November 25th, 2022. And the governor of Osun, on November 27, 2022, inked his executive order based on the Federal High Court judgment, asking them to vacate office. And we were not pleased with that judgment. We approached the Court of Appeal, and we sought a number of relief, and the Court of Appeal granted it. So it's a straightforward thing, and there's no need to beating about the bush. The Constitution of Nigeria is so clear about it. The 1999 Constitution, Section 287, subsection 2 says, the decision of the Court of Appeal shall be enforced in any part of the country by all authority and all people. So the police, the DSS, even the government himself is also part of authority. So we must not flout the Constitution of Nigeria. We must all adhere to the decision of the Court of Appeal.
But one of the things that the PDP is saying is that the All Progressives Congress resorted to self-help in enforcing the judgment, even if they assumed without conceding that indeed the Court of Appeal granted the reliefs of the APC, which was the reinstatement of the sacked local government chairpersons, that you were supposed to resort to the court in implementing the judgment. How do you react to this?
That's not true. Why will you go back to the court? The court had given a final judgment, and it is clear. And the police requested for the certified true copy of the judgment. And according to the Constitution of Nigeria, the police are meant to enforce judgment, and as well as the authority. I just quoted the section of the Constitution of Nigeria, 287, subsection 2, the decision of the Court of Appeal shall, not may, shall be enforced. So the police insisted that we should they want the CCT of the judgment, and they got it. And they said, yes, let's accompany it to the council. So it's simple. We did not resort to self-help. If we resort to self-help, we won't be on the receiving end of the attack. One of the newly reinstated council chairman, Rebased, was brutally murdered. He was killed. I narrowly escaped being killed. Go and look at my vehicle, all on the media, was ridden with bullets. So if we resorted to self-help, we won't be on the receiving end. Right. We are a law-abiding party, and that was why we approached the court, and the court gave a clear judgment. And we went to the police, and the police said, okay, you can go to the council. So it's simple.
Mr. Hakim, let's come to you. Maybe you respond to some of the things he said, but I want to read the concluding statement of their law justices. This is Justice Abubakar Muazu. In the circumstance with the resolution of the two issues in favor of the applicant, it follows that this appeal is meritorious and is accordingly allowed. The amended originating summon is hereby struck out for incompetence and consequently all of the costs. And then if you go to that of Justice Isaiah Lufemi Akeju, he said, I've read the lead judgment of my learned brother Abubakar. I agree with the reasoning and conclusion, hearing that the appeal has merit. I allow the appeal and abide by the consequential order. I move on to Jane Esienwa Inyang, also is I think one of the justices. I too allow the appeal and set aside the decision and orders of the lower court. I abide by the consequential orders made in the lead judgment. I just need to read so the audience can understand what the judges said. Maybe you're the legal man, you'll be able to break it down, also respond to what our guest right here in Lagos City said.
Thank you. Yeah, on the it's quite unfortunate that the APC as a party and their sacked chairman have decided to be misinforming the world about the Court of Appeal judgment. It is clear the PDP as a party concedes that truly the suit filed in 2022 to challenge the election conducted by OSEC was struck out by the Court of Appeal in a judgment delivered on the 10th of February. But it's allowed. Having said that, if we look at the last two sentences of the late judgment, the Court of Appeal explains the consequence, the effects, the implication of the court allowing the appeal by saying, I'm quoting the judgment now, consequently, the case, the suit filed by the PDP is quoted, is cited, the suit is hereby struck out, a cost of 250,000 naira is hereby awarded against the People's Democratic Party. The two sentences, the two last orders made by the court are enough. I've explained enough the consequence of the court allowing the appeal. We should get something right as to the basis, the ground upon which the Court of Appeal struck out the suit of the PDP. The Court of Appeal, out of the four issues formulated by the appellants in court, the first two issues dealt with preliminary issues as to the competence of the suit filed by the PDP, while the third and fourth issues dealt with the substance of the case as to the validity of the election. But the Court of Appeal, while after deciding the first two issues relating to the competence of the suit as to the time the suit was filed, the Court of Appeal held that the trial court, which is the Federal High Court sitting in Osogbo, did not have jurisdiction to have entertained the suit, as the suit was filed before the then OSEC gave the notice of the election. So after deciding the two issues, the Court of Appeal declined to go into the two other issues dealing with whether the election held in 2022 was valid or not. So the court never made any order, any consequential order restating the chairman sacked by the PDP case. Now, having said that, it is unfortunate that my brother in the house there has deliberately decided not to make mention of the case of APP as a party. It is instructive to let the whole world know that in 2022, PDP was not the only opposition party in the state, in Osun State. PDP went to court. APP as another party went to court in a separate case challenging the election held by the OSEC.
So, Mr. Hakim, before we get to just a moment, before we get to issue of APP and before my colleague comes in, so what does this Court of Appeal judgment that I read all three judges' position as far as this case is concerned, what does it mean? Because what you're saying in essence is there are no enforceable order for them to go and be reinstated. Is that what you're saying? Because that's what they are saying.
What I was saying is that there is no any executory order of the court to be enforced. And that is why the APC has resorted to separate. The law has the civil mechanism of enforcing the order of any court. So if anybody disturbs them from enforcing the order of the court in their favor, there is a civil mechanism through which they can get the order involved, because they know there is no any executory order made by the Court of Appeal in that judgment. They could not approach the court to get an order of permitter to deal with anybody that disturbs
Mr. Karim,
from enforcing or reaping the fruit of their judgment. So
Mr.
what
Karim,
I'm saying in essence is that yes.
So what's the implication of the court striking out the suit?
The implication was that the PDP as a party never went to court. It was as if, as we speak today, it is as if PDP never went to court, never filed any suit to challenge the election. That's just it. The court never made any order, any consequential order, executory order that enforceable to restate them, because the court never even determined the validity of the election. The court never determined the merits of the case. Not any consequential order made by the court. To restate them.
All right, Mr. Karim, Mr. Moai, perhaps you want to respond to some of the things he has said.
Well, we should not be too ambiguous with this. It's a straightforward thing, and I'm glad your colleague read out the judgment and he talked about consequential order. And I'm surprised my brother is giving his own interpretation when it is clear. Now, let me quickly read this to you. We sought about 8 reliefs from the Court of Appeal. These validly elected council members were sacked based on the judgment of the Federal High Court in favor of PDP. And based on that, the governor came up with an executive order. The judgment was given 25th of November 2022. The governor announced their sack on the 27th of November 2022. I heard him talking about APP judgment. APP judgment came 30th November 2022. So they were not sacked based on APP judgment. APC, we were not pleased with the judgment. We approached the Court of Appeal. And these are, I'll just read a few of the reliefs. We sought about 8 reliefs. But, and others are allowing this appeal. But one of the reliefs that is very important is Relief G. He said an order restoring the appellant back into their offices, having duly elected by the citizens of Osun State. And when the Court of Appeal gave judgment, they said your appeal is meritorious and are hereby allowed. And from what your colleague read, the 2 other justices said they also stand by this late judgment and the consequential orders. It is clear. So why would you come and now say you are not pleased with the judgment? If you are not pleased with the judgment, the sensible thing for you to have done is to also file a notice of appeal to the Supreme Court. We don't have to fight, we don't have to do anything.
Perhaps the PDP is saying that maybe the court should have been clearer in stating clearly, that the appeal that you sought, being the reinstatement of the sacked local government chairman, was stated clearly in the judgment.
Any serious lawyer knows that the Court of Appeal has the way they use their term. Once they tell you appeal is allowed, what that means is all your ground has been allowed. They can however tell you appeal is allowed in part. If they had told us that our appeal is allowed in part, we had 8 reliefs. They will now list the ones they allowed, or they disallow you completely. So you don't need, the Court of Appeal will not come and say, you have to go and do this, you have to go and do this. No, 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 no. That's not the way they give their judgment. A law graduate of today knows that once they tell you an appeal is allowed, it means all your ground has been allowed. But if they have said your appeal is allowed in part, then they will now list the relief that has been allowed. So even the justice said your consequential order has been allowed. So what other interpretation do they have? They want. This is very straightforward. They know the truth. They are just trying to twist the law. And law is not emotion. It's straightforward. So
I'd like you to quickly respond to the strength of his argument that you are also relying on the APP's suit in court.
I just explained to you that this council member, chairman, were sacked based on a judgment against APC, November 25th. November 27th, they were sacked. The APP judgment came after they've been sacked.
Good morning.
Now, the APP went to Court of Appeal. APC went on Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal ruled that APP abandoned their case in the Court of Appeal in January 10 or thereabout. January 22nd, APP filed a motion to release their case in the Court of Appeal to bring it back alive. But in our own case, we had a full judgment, February 10, 2025. And we are not concerned with the APP judgment. I'm not a member of APP. I just took time to explain to you that the APP judgment at the lower court didn't even came after these council members had been sacked. They were sacked November 27. They got a judgment which the governor now is executive order on 25th November 2022. They were sacked 27 November 2022. The APP judgment came 30th November. And APP went to Court of Appeal. APC went to Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal ruled January 10 that APP abandoned the appeal. APP filed a motion to release their appeal, January 23rd. APC got a full judgment on February 10th, 2025, that all your the relief that you sought had been approved. They use the word meritorious and are hereby allowed. You will not see any seasoned or reasonable lawyer coming to argue against that. What is expected of them is simple. If you are not in support of the judgment, all you need to do, file notice of appeal to the Supreme Court. It is simple.
All right. Well, it's an ongoing conversation. The most important thing is that APC and PDP and the entire Osun people, you guys have to look for a way. The state has to look for a way to move forward. We don't know what that moving forward means.
No. You are a journalist. Nobody can fault. You can't sit down in your house and fault the judgment of the Court of Appeal that is clear. No. And let me tell you, sir, the Constitution of Nigeria is clear.
We're not arguing about. I'm not debating Court of Appeal. I'm saying everybody is in copy of the judgment, right?
Yes. Please.
You are in copy. They are in copy.
You are also in copy.
We're all in copy.
Yes.
But it is Osun State, the state of Osun.
It's Nigeria. You know what the Constitution said? The Constitution said the decision of the Court of Appeal shall be enforced.
Osun people, the government of Osun, and all the parties must look for a way. There must be a way forward.
No, the simple way forward is for us to obey the law. It's not emotion.
And Remy,
it's not that you feel we should do this. No, it's the law.
He's the executive director, the Project Implementation Federal Housing Authority of Nigeria. Nuruddin Karim is a special advisor to Governor Deleke on legal matters. Gentlemen, I must thank you, and we hope nobody dies again, and there will be a way forward for the state.
Beg the governor.
Well, we'll be back after this time. Join us again in just a moment.
Well, it's a modern world, as they say, but how well are our children, our young people equipped with the skills to thrive in this very fast-changing world? I mean, one moment you're talking AI, the next you're talking AI version 2. We're joined on the program by Oluwadamilola Ojo, the founder of Skooks Creative Limited, and this focuses on teaching young people digital, vocational, and educational skills. Good morning, Oluwadamilola. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
We should naturally talk about STEM, but your hair is just calling me. Talk about me. Talk about me. So I can't help it. I have to fall for this. The hair, it's just the elephant in the room, really. Is this a statement? Is this part of the, the work you're doing? What exactly inspired the hair?
I would say I wanted a different look for today.
Right.
In order for people to know that, yes, we're here on serious business.
Make a statement. I love that. So speak to us about where we're at today, and I'm talking the world. So we want to take a look at where the world is and then measure where we are as a nation, as a people, in relation to where the world is, or where the world is headed, because they've said that this is meant to be our leapfrog moment.
Yep.
But are we leapfrogging? Are we hopping? Are we walking, strolling, or just lagging behind?
Yeah, so according to the International Labour Organization in 2023, they say that 60% of African youths lack digital skills that are needed for the future of work. And with this, when we bring it down to Nigeria and our unemployment rate, you see that a lot of this is caused because of the difference or the huge gap between the traditional education and the transitioning into the job ecosystem. So something has to be done to bridge that gap, and that is where digital skills come in. Right, digital skills is one of those essential skills that are relevant and will continue to remain relevant in the next 10, 20 years, right? So you can fit into every sector, right? Work in any organization, right? When you have a digital skill. So I would say, as a nation, we're still far behind. A lot of people who have access to digital skills we're talking about are either from a very good background or they attend maybe a very posh private school, right? However, digital skills access should be for everybody, and it shouldn't be limited to those from a certain type of background or location.
In Nigeria, it's just a very wonderful place. You find both extremes. You find the very rich, people who are unbelievably rich, and you might be tempted to just judge Nigeria based on that. You go to some areas and all you're seeing Rolls Royce, all of those vehicles. But then you have the very poor as well. Sadly, they are way more than even people who seem to be doing fairly well. And that is our reality right now. I know that it can be quite tough. Take, for example, the price of data is now increased. So if you were battling then with getting people access or getting people on the internet where a lot of these things happen, now I imagine the struggle is times two. So I want us to pick some of those challenges and maybe find ways around them. I know you're doing some great work. Maybe you share the experience you've had with these children, how well they've been able to improve and the opportunities out there. But there's a challenge of first, cost of data. Second, infrastructure, the cost of the gadgets themselves. So it almost puts the people who are the lower rung of the ladder, pardon me, at a disadvantage. So how can we begin to change the narrative for them?
Okay, that's a very interesting topic. Yes, there are challenges, like you've mentioned, the internet access and also the infrastructure generally. And one thing that has helped us, I would say, is one, international funding. Last year, we received an education innovation fund that allowed us to be able to purchase some digital gadgets, and this enabled us to reach 500,000 underserved communities and students, as well as their teachers. Yes, 500,000. You heard that right.
In what part of the country? Is
different states. So we did Lagos, Kano, Enugu. We went to Kaduna. We were in Benin, Calabar. Right, and I'm
sorry. What did you reach them with?
Reach them with? Yes, so exactly we had a digital skills curriculum. So the program was from my nonprofit. That's the Creative Kids Zone that I talked about. It's the Digital Skills Fellowship, and our goal was to ensure that we partner with schools, we partner with the government to ensure that digital skills access were provided to as many underserved individuals as possible. So we created manuals, worksheets, and also we had laptops that we were always having to take around to these different locations.
But you couldn't leave them there?
Yeah, no, we couldn't leave them there, right? If we had access to more funding, maybe yes, because we've been able to train them and train their teachers to even continue the learning process, right? So we also were able to, we really appreciate the Lagos State government. They were really supportive, especially the Ministry of Education, right, in making this initiative possible, right? We held digital skills competitions. We had different outreaches in different local communities as well. And even with the language barrier for the northern states, we're able to get like native volunteers or teachers that we could train, and then they train the trainers and then they pass it down to their audiences. And with the internet access, what we're doing next at Skooks is we've recently gotten a physical facility, right, that has a residential hostel that people could come around and take 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year courses and continue the learning process with us.
You know why this conversation is really important? You realize that we're in the future right now, and I don't see that sense of emergency. I mean, you can only do as much.
Yep.
Yes, you try to reach out to 500,000 people, but you can't do the work of perhaps government, the work that the institutions are meant to do. So this is just some sort of ameliorative measure just to help to reduce the impact, but the heavy lifting has to be done. And I don't know if you sense that seriousness. And I know we always say government, but I like to always say that you can also partner government. We have, the private sector. What are we doing with subsidizing internet, for example, for those areas? So if you're in Lagos, you can purchase data for 5,000. But if you're in the hinterlands, you can purchase data for 1,000. Why? at that moment, we're not thinking profit, but we're thinking about the future. We're thinking about empowering our people. A lot of these gadgets are not produced here. So it's whatever price they call, you convert from dollar to naira before you purchase it, and that's beyond the reach of a lot of people. So are we thinking creative enough as a people or as a nation?
My answer would be no, and that we can do better, right? We've been able to partner with a couple of private organizations to help push our initiative, and the government, like I say. So the major thing is, can we be able to create some of this or solve some of these challenges internally, right? Like, can we start producing our own gadgets here? Can we subsidize internet, right? Like you said, I would say we need to possibly have roundtable discussions with telcos and all of these organizations to see how we can solve this, especially for those marginalized communities.
Well, this table is not round as much as oval, but I'm really interested in what you have there, the digital dash card game.
Yes.
So I see what you try to do is also give them fun activities. So learning to not be all that serious and then the children are bored. I see some of them playing video games and the rest. I know I'm maybe older, but I don't mind joining. So talk to us about some of these things you have.
Yes, so for some communities where their literacy and numeracy skills are not like up to par, or they probably never used a laptop before, or we can't even, it's not motorable enough to take laptops, right? So we created games, right? One is the digital card. If you play generally, but this has like firewall shield, so you can, like, it has code breaker, so like a fun way to teach about digital terms and still have fun, right? We also have like storybooks that we distribute to communities, as well as some that individuals purchase, right? So it's just a way to say, okay, let's just keep providing access. Let them know about it at a very young age. And let them be aware of the opportunities that are available out there, right? Because with digital skills, you can work from anywhere in the world. You can elevate your family from poverty, honestly. And that is our goal. At least one person in each family in Nigeria and Africa should have a digital vocational entrepreneurial skill. That way, we can eradicate poverty gradually.
And that's fantastic work. And I hope we're able to build around this, make it even bigger, and everyone joins forces, because it looks like everyone is working in different silos. It's good we have these measures, but if we're able to come together almost like Voltron, then we can combat this. But thank you for the great work you're doing. Hopefully these children will learn digital skills the right way, so they don't fall into the wrong hands. And we have, you know who and you know what I'm talking about. We're speaking with Oluwadamilola Ojo, founder of Skooks Creative Limited, on the all-important conversation around STEMs. Thank you for your time and all of the innovations you're bringing on board, and look forward to the great things.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So let's take a quick break now. When we return, what have you been saying about the big topics? We'll take a look at them in a moment. Stay with us.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com. Click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.
So let's get right into what you've been saying. Quite a number of them, from the inflation figures to the 90-plus-year-old man who registered for UTME at the age of 94. But something played out again with the aviation industry. Thankfully not in Nigeria this time around. In America, that Delta flight 4819. Thank God there was 8 in the middle of the 4 and 199, right? This was from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and you see upside down on the runway after landing at Toronto's Pearson.
Thank God nobody died.
And watching that video, it's a miracle.
What's going on with the American airspace,
died.
by the way?
But
this is the third.
Yeah, there are reports that 8 persons are injured, and most passengers walked off the plane.
And you could hear, please leave your phones, but no, people said, I will record this. We have to record this. And you know, this is the moment where all of those pre-flight instructions, you know,
flies out of the window.
You're like, I wish I had listened. What did they say we should do again? But do I look under my seat or?
Yeah. We're grateful that nobody died, but America should be very concerned. This is the third in about 2 months or so.
Yeah, incident.
It's just too much. Something is going on now. Something is going wrong. I don't even know. There was a mid-air collision. Then there was another one. I've forgotten the second one, and this one
again. Landed in the residential area.
Residential area, yes. And then this, it doesn't just, something is not right.
Thankfully, I hope the snow helped, because naturally the impact, you could see the fire, but it was doused. So, yeah, that's how it ended.
All right, so let's come back to Nigeria. So what inflation numbers are saying and what you're saying as well. Akiti, you said President Tinubu said he will make it happen, and it looks like now better security allows easy movement of food and goods. A good reason for food security to improve. Dollar has been stable for a few. I see good signs. I don't know whether it's sarcasm or a supporter of the president. I'm not sure, but thank you for your thoughts.
Economics textbook is
I don't know where that one is coming from. But as we said, it's not a drop or a decline. It's just a rebased number, right? Yeah. This is our new reality. Let's face it.
Seems like Tinubunomics to me for Akiti or Lawful Jai. Well, this next one is from Akiri Yejo, who says, our sacrifices are beginning to pay off. Better days ahead. Well, I don't think they get the full picture.
The only sacrifice here was that household survey that was done. That was the only work and it cost us actually, because household survey, that's why we had not done it since 2009. So that's the only sacrifice that was done.
I'm even
Don't get it twisted.
I'm even curious to the fact that as I was questioning the weightage, how did they removed about 10 and added it to meals away from home.
Right.
So is it that the economy got harder, people started eating more outside?
People naturally just chose to eat outside, because I think for a lot of young people...
No, it's not about the movement. It's about, in economics, the numbers.
No, a lot of people don't have time to cook these days.
No, because it doesn't make it any... it doesn't lead to any reduction in your expenses.
Certainly. It's just the weight that was now allocated to it.
The weight. We're talking about from 1.2 to 12. That's significant.
Because obviously it's now taking a more part of the basket.
We'll debate that later.
No, it's not a debate, actually. It's just the fact that it's now more regular in that basket.
No, I can debate it. Yes, people sat down to do the analytics and came up with a number. I can challenge it.
All right, thank you. We have to run.
Thank you for watching. I'm Jeff Rizoma. Bye-bye.
Sunrise Daily is up next time. Bukola Koka, Channel TV.
Age should never be a limitation. That man registered for UTME at age 94. So what are you doing? I'm Kayode Okikulu. Have a great day.